any of you guys by any chance got Maya 2018?
Oh, God, no.
No?
And here we have the man of the hour.
Hey, folks.
Hello. Oh, Ryder is
Hey,
here.
Veer.
We are stacked up waiting for you.
All right. Well, we might as well go ahead and get started. So we're back. I'm back. I was out the last couple of weeks. Still plugging away on the Animesh viewer and server work. The latest thing there is that we're adding an additional LSL command. I think I've mentioned somebody's got an open mic. If I'm getting a little bit of echo back from. Yeah, that's the one, Lucia. Yeah, we started to document this stuff too. So we've had for a long time two commands, one for starting an animation, one for stopping an animation. But there are some cases where it's also useful to be able to get the list of all the currently playing animations. So the idea there is if you wanted to stop all the animations on an object, you could just query the contents of the list and say, hey, stop these things. Or if you want to check whether a particular thing was playing, you could check whether it's on the list, that sort of thing. Yeah, so we've already started to document this stuff too. Obviously this is all subject to change, but these are links on the public wiki, and if anybody wants to look at them, they can. We've got start object animation and stop object animation and new and improved get object animation names. And we'll continue to update those pages as new stuff happens. Of course, it doesn't do any direct good right now since we still don't have a public project viewer out, but this will be probably useful reference once people start trying to do some testing. Let's see. I think Alexa had an additional update as well. Alexa, do you want to jump in for a second?
Sure. A couple things. Thank you for everyone for showing up. It's always nice to see such a great group of people here. So one of the things that was mentioned or requested in the last meeting was that when Animesh, yes, I'm saying that word, get used to hearing it a lot, when Animesh rolls out, that we have test content in the library. So that everybody can immediately start looking at it, playing with it, seeing how it works. I have passed this request on, and everyone thought it was a great idea. So they are, the LDPW team is looking at doing that. Second, I wanted to give you guys a little tease. When I was playing around while Veer was gone, that's a tongue twister, playing around a little bit with Animesh and really trying to put it to a heavy-duty test with large armies of dancing zombies and bears, and him learning some really great things as I tested out. So, thought you would like that little teaser of a video.
Yeah, so what you're seeing there in the video is And thanks for putting that together, Alexa. That's really cool. What you're seeing there is some mesh avatars that we had made in the past that have now been turned into Animesh objects. Right? There's nobody in the suits there. These are just objects that are independently playing animations and doing their thing, based on meshes that were created in the past for other purposes and have been adapted. So I see everybody's placated and nobody wants a project viewer. That's good. Our work here is done
And
already, so we can
goodbye.
go.
Now, I wanted to ask, was the experience for you guys like as fluent as in the video, or running this scene? Was it like, did it come out good, or I don't know, like I'm trying to figure out if it's like lagging intensive
No, it's
or
exactly
whatever.
what you're seeing in the video. I filmed it while it was running.
Okay, it's amazing. It's really amazing. I arrived to this meeting. There were other people. I personally expect the Secondlife population to increase 700% because of Animesh.
Wow, imagine what else I could animate then.
If we can't imagine
do you
it,
have
the
an
residents
ETA
can.
for a beta viewer?
So we don't have a definite date for the project viewer. Still trying to get it out as soon as we can. I can give you a little bit of context on what's still left to do there. The biggest piece that we really need to polish more with the project viewer is the way that these animated objects get positioned. The way that the skeleton gets positioned relative to the original object doesn't always work that great, and so depending on which model you're working with, sometimes you get this sort of jump where stuff will shift or whatever when you start animating it. And the even larger problem is if you try to use them as attachments, the management of the transform matrices there isn't right at all, and so these things, they sort of float around in the vicinity of the avatar, but they don't actually rotate and move appropriately as the attachment point does. So that's just a fundamentally not working right thing that we need to sort out. There's also going to need to be some work on looking at the the various controls we're going to want to have, how many can be running at a time and what's the rendering cost impact of them and that sort of thing. The goal there isn't really to have the final numbers, it's just to make sure that we have the tools in place to manage this stuff, that there are numbers that we can tweak rather than just not being able to control it at all. Other than that, there's a couple of things that people have proposed already based on internal testing that we need to think about. So, again, we're trying to get something put together as soon as we can. It's that the goal isn't to be perfect or to address every possible concern. It's just to make sure that we have something that's solid enough to be useful, so that you guys can actually get some good out of using it and can start to give us your feedback.
Oh, one thing that came into my mind now, you were mentioning before that you want to create like an animation lister or something like that, if I didn't misunderstand. And I was thinking, like, do you think it could be even possible like to make like animation manager where you can actually see all the animations that are relevant to you and I don't know, possibly, change the speeds or turn one off or turn one other on, something like that. Especially speed. There's a lot of people who have attempted changing speeds of animations in avatars, especially.
Yeah, changing speeds of animations is something that's been proposed. I'm not sure that we'd be tackling that for this project, but it is in the pipeline as something that we may want to look at some point. In terms of the question of being able to sort of manage a set of animations, with the LSL functions that we're adding for for the Animesh project, it should be possible to have a HUD or something that does that. Basically, you need to add animations to the inventory of the object that you want to animate, and then once the animations are in that inventory, then they can be started or stopped by name from the from the script within that object. So um, you could be as simple or as complex as you want with respect to how many you want to have running at a time, or
Yeah, a
subject to
HUD
the
would
normal limits
be
of the animation
wonderful if there
system.
was a HUD. It would be really, really wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have something like that, in the test content, but it's certainly something that would be possible to implement, given the tools that we'll have available.
I don't know what to say. You guys are amazing. It's looking at this video. It's really fantastic. I'm looking forward just for the for the release of the viewer.
Yeah, we're really excited to see what people will be able to do with it once it's out. So we'll continue to keep you posted at these meetings, and hopefully have something up pretty soon. Let's see. There's a question about developing Animesh for attachments could extend the development for months extra. I don't know if it's a huge thing. It already kind of works in the in the internal test, in the sense that you can already attach an object, and the object you attach is allowed to be Animesh and is allowed to play animations. The only problem I'm aware of with it is this transform matrix thing, which I think in itself isn't a huge fix. We need to sort it out, but it's not like it's gonna take ages and ages. But I think the other thing there is that we're going to need to look at having the ability to enforce some kind of limits. If somebody wants to have 20 different Animesh attachments, that's probably not going to fly very well. So we'd need to have some ability to throttle that based on some criteria.
Could you kindly tell us maybe how would it work to import something like this? I mean, between the rig and everything, what would be the file formats?
Yeah, basically it works the same way that it does today for making rigged mesh avatars. You can make a collada file that has a DAE that has a skinned mesh in it, and you can upload that using the upload model capability. So basically, once you've done that, turning one of those things into a mesh avatar, or turning one of them into an Animesh object is basically going to be the same process. There's just a little bit of additional work with the Animesh object where you have to define the scripts and the inventory of attachments.
So the animation will be inside the script, or like it's going to be the script
inside the object. The object would
animation.
contain the script and the animations, and then when the script is running, it has access to any of the animations inside its own object, and is able to animate its own object. Let's see, Polysale, you had a couple of questions about the transform matrix stuff. Yeah, I mean, we already have some notion of managing a hierarchy. I mean, you can have a static uh, mesh object on an attachment point now that um, tracks the movement of the attachment point. So, I think it's a fixable problem, but we just need to do a little more digging on it. In terms of increasing the size of the skeleton, yeah, I mean it means you're moving around more bones. Whether you think of it as being part of the skeleton of the avatar or just part of the complexity of the overall scene, I don't think it's going to make a big difference whether it's attached or not. But it is it is going to require more complicated tracking. Um, let's see. Question about will there be a size limit of Animesh? Probably. We don't have one yet, but I think that's probably a good hook for keeping the performance impact reasonable. Is if you can't have ultra giant meshes as
There about size. I wanted Animesh like 4 years ago, like so long ago. And the idea was, I'm making boats, yachts, okay? And like there are some yachts, like the bigger ones that have a mast like 50 meters tall, something like that. So there can be sails on boats that can reach, it can be 40, 45 meters in height, at least. Yeah. So if you're gonna like impose some size limitation, please do take into consideration stuff like sails, because it would be nice to have realistic sails for sailboats, and we all know how much vehicles are important to Second Life also.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to have you here talking about vehicles because that's one of the areas that I think will be important for Animesh that we haven't really talked about a whole lot. It's in terms of like what's the size limit going to be. Either I was talking about size in the sense of number of triangles earlier, but yeah, size in terms of physical dimensions is probably also something we want to look at. There's already some limits imposed by what you can do with an avatar skeleton, and so if we don't make any special effort to set new limits, then we're going to wind up with basically the same rules applying to Animesh objects. But since there may be some different use cases, so we'll have to look at that. Once people get a chance to start testing it, I'm sure we'll get better feedback on that.
Well, for vehicles, the complexity of the amount of animation is going to be very important, because you don't need pivot points anymore. You don't need to make invisible triangles. So you can make very, very complex, from doors to whatever is moving part inside a vehicle could be animated. So it can add up a lot very easily.
It's pretty doable on your boat. I don't think your boat is beyond the size that you could make a rig. So I think it's totally doable. At least in my opinion.
Well, the boats I have at the moment, the ones I showed you, they're actually motorboats. So, we're using we spend a lot of time making something to animate objects without, easily. But especially sailboats, like if there is some content creator that is a detail freak like I am, the bigger they are, there's a lot of moving parts. So also cars can have a lot of moving parts. So I'm just mentioning this not for personal reasons, because of course Linden Lab has to decide. There's a performance issue also. Yeah, but I think there needs to be into consideration that maybe if you give limitations now, it's fine, but there should be a base under that. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years from now, where there's going to be people going to have better computers, better servers, then you can start adding more, because the more you have, the more you can have complexity into anything that is engineered, mechanical or something like that.
All right, I'm just going to back up through the chat to see if I missed any previous questions. There's some talk about remote control. You could basically make an object that responds to commands in chat channels any way you want. So you could use that as a remote control mechanism, but I'm sure you're going to have concerns about who's giving things orders. Let's see, there's questions about whether developing Animesh for attachments is going to be a huge project. So far I think it's just work, just stuff that needs to be fixed. But obviously, if it turns out to be some horrible slog, then that we'll have to take that into account. There's a comment about people wanting to wear their pets, and that is kind of the primary use case that seems like makes it highly desirable to have attachments. I'm sure there's lots of other uses too, but that's the thing that lets you kind of drag these things around with you without having to do any extra work if they're attached. Let's see what else. There's some discussion about an LL God constant. I'm not sure what that is.
Have you done any testing as far as the load?
Yeah, I think at this point, Alexa's probably done the heaviest usage stuff. Do you have any comments on kind of what happens to the frame rate when you have a gazillion bears dancing at the same time or whatever?
I think my maximum, I had my line dancing zombies around 320 something of them going at one time. And walking around doing other things in the region, I did not find any performance drop. Some of the things I am seeing are little things with interest list. As far as if you're standing in in front of 300 dancing zombies bears, depending on where your camera focus is, the animation can get a little off. Most of you have seen it if you go to a dance club and you pan the camera really far up and everybody starts dancing like little ants on fire, and then you zoom back in and they slow down. I see a little bit of that. But as far as performance, I was shocked. I mean, that's why I kept making more and more bears, was to see if all of a sudden I locked up and crashed. And I really didn't notice a difference. And most of them are running 6 dance animations, one after another with a slight pause, and then they would all click back in.
One thing we may be seeing with hundreds of zombies or hundreds of bears is that since they all share the same mesh ID, there's less actual copies of content floating around than it might look like, and we may be getting some benefits from that. If we were running 300 different unrelated objects instead of 300 of the same thing, we might see a significant difference. But of course, that's harder to test because you've got to assemble a lot more content.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've run into some interesting glitches with the way animations play back. This isn't actually new with Animesh, but one thing you may have seen before is that when an animation is playing on an avatar that's a long way away from you, sometimes it kind of flips out and seems to be moving super fast. So that looks particularly weird when you have dozens of these things all going at the same time, and some of them look like they're going at 3 times normal speed or whatever. But and that's something that we'll probably want to take a look at. Although we wouldn't necessarily have to fix that before we went to Project Viewer. It's it's more of an aesthetic deficiency rather than a serious bug. Let's see. You asked about comparing 350 dancing zombies to 40 avatars at a club or event.
It's a little hard because I'm also testing on an empty region that doesn't have a lot of other content on it, so that could skew it a bit.
Yeah, and I think the impact of 40 avatars really depends on the avatars. They may be using super heavy duty mesh bodies, or they may be using stuff that's lighter weight, and I think the impact is going to make a big difference there. Obviously, there's also a lot of work that we have to do to manage avatars that we don't have to do for Animesh objects. For Animesh objects, basically we just have to send out updates every so often that say, here, this animation is playing or not. So there's a relatively limited amount of traffic, whereas with avatars, there's all kind of other stuff going on that we have to notify everybody about, and it's much more complex managing all of the traffic related to a real people avatar. There's a question backing up a second sorry, Lazanda, I missed this earlier. Question is there's an update on the server-side baked textures on Mesh Bodies project. That is still at the stage where we're working on the updates to the bake service. I think that Anchor has been working on another project for the last little time, but what he's working on for bakes on Mesh is getting the updated bake service working, and then making sure that the viewer is happy with that. What we're trying to do there is increase the resolution so that you can go up to 1024 on the textures, and we need to see how viewers are going to handle that, and if changes are going to be needed on the viewer side as well. Still working on it, but those the pieces with updating the bake service have to be done before we can get to the stage of actually applying the bake textures on the mesh itself.
It would be interesting also to test, I don't know, like a character while crossing a sim. Could it be doable?
So what was the question? Can one of these Animesh objects cross to a different region or a different sim?
Yeah, let's say I take a Bento skeleton, I create a zombie like you did, I drop in regular Secondlife animation, like walking animation like this, and I don't know, I code it somehow to follow me. Okay, so I'm gonna cross a region. What's gonna happen? Is it doable? I'm thinking about the possibilities.
Yeah, no, that works. Our test setup has regions that are running on different sims, and you can have an animated object follow you across a region boundary, and it basically works. Obviously, there is some additional work that has to be done under the hood for that to happen. Stuff has to get serialized and passed off to the other sim and so forth. But it's basically just part of the object state, and seems to work.
Well, I can think, looking at the zombie video, that clubbing in Secondlife is gonna increase a lot. Like having robots dancing, stuff like this.
I'm impressed. I mean, hundreds. I don't, even if it is on an empty region, hundreds is impressive.
Yeah, I think that's good news that it works at the scale it does. It's in test so far. Obviously the animations, the objects we're testing with are uh, quite a bit less complex than a fully loaded mesh avatar would be, and I'm sure that makes a big difference in terms of the load impact.
I bet my elephant is lower than what you were using, so I could get probably more elephants on there. Herds and herds of elephants.
Yeah, I've done tests with quite a few elephants. I haven't gotten up to 300, but the elephant scales very nicely. The cat works nicely too, Zuby. Let's see. We have a question back a little ways about how our LODs handled. In what context? I mean, basically, we have a process for how we handle LODs for rigged meshes. That's the process we use for avatars, and currently it just works the same way for for Animesh objects. There's rules about when LODs get swapped uh, based on distance.
It sounds like they imposter too, right?
I don't think they currently imposter. That's on the list of things to look at, but we haven't really poked at it yet. Yeah. I'll asks if the rule works a bit differently. I'm not positive that the Animesh objects are using exactly the same LOD criteria as conventional avatars do, but obviously that's something that we can tweak as needed. It's the basic idea that we swap LODs based on distance is still there either way.
Well, I'm be looking forward to see the first Animesh doors in the Second Life prefabs and windows.
Yeah, we haven't done a lot with physics so far. Certainly animated meshes aren't physical. If your avatar is waving its arms around, the arms don't do collision detection for whether they're banging into something. So, even if your Animesh object can have some physical object in the link set, it's not going to have the physics complexity that you'd associate with the actual animation at the same time.
You're not saying they have to be phantom, are you?
Yeah, we should be able to support physics in there, right? An Animesh object can be a link set that contains multiple objects, multiple prims. Um, but it's just that the actual animations themselves aren't physical.
Have you tried riding the elephant?
I'm not sure if I tried with the elephant. I did try with one of our rigged meshes. The problem you run into when you try to ride one of these guys is if you're playing an animation that actually kind of moves the whole body, that doesn't move the sit point. So, you're kind of sitting there at a fixed point in space, and then the thing you're sitting on is sort of gyrating all over the place underneath you. So it doesn't really look like you're fixed to the animesh the way you would expect. So I think if you're trying to have something that's sittable, and as I say, I haven't tried it with the elephant in particular. If you're trying to have something that's sittable, you would need to, make sure that the animations you were using, kind of controlled for that they weren't moving the mesh in such a way that it's going to kind of shimmy around relative to the sit point.
There, sorry, I was thinking, I was thinking about, yeah, Midu mentioned the elephant, yeah, like about horses, for example. Like recently, I've seen some very nice mesh horses, and it's you actually wear it as an attachment, yeah. So when you're going around, it's basically it is your avatar running it, yeah. So I was thinking, what if, like for rideable animals, for example, if you're wearing an Animesh, if there was possibly a way to have the Animesh override your avatar. Could that be possible?
I mean, I'm not sure if you even need Animesh for that. I mean, as you say, the horses today already work by, um, basically being part of the attachments on your avatar and just animate your skeleton. So, that's kind of the default behavior for rigged mesh attachments already. Um, so, uh, I'm not sure. The sort of the point of Animesh is to allow these animated objects to have their own skeletons. So if they don't need their own skeleton, if they're supposed to be driving the avatar skeleton, then it seems like that's basically the behavior that we already have without Animesh, isn't it?
Have you tried the Animesh with pathfinding yet?
Uh, I have not done anything with pathfinding. Alexa, do you know if you or any of the QA folks have looked at that? Haven't?
I
Okay.
have, I haven't, but I can check and see if Dan has.
Yeah, my expectation would be that it's going to work basically the same as it does now because the basically being an Animesh just sort of adds some additional complexity to the behavior of the displayed geometry. But under the hood, it's still an object in the scene that knows how to do objecty stuff. But as we say, we haven't actually exercised that yet.
Are you planning to bring artificial intelligence for NPC in the future? Like this Animesh is a first step for this for Linden Lab?
I think AI for NPCs is a big question. The follow-up work that we're talking about currently for Animesh is to have some capabilities that would allow you to do better NPCs, but it's more along the lines of supporting shapes and wearables so that you can customize your avatar appearance better. We haven't really thought about kind of AI as a thing that we provide. I think the assumption currently is that that's something that would be done, in LSL by the scripter.
Yeah, I think the real issue with like pathfinding, I hear a lot that people's land, they don't update it enough to, or design it in a way where things won't get stuck there and things like that. So I don't know how to fix that though.
Yeah, there's no way around that.
Yeah, I know there are some questions about, or feature requests or issues with pathfinding, but that's kind of outside the scope of the animated object work.
I have one little request. Um, one, from what I understand, you basically you're in the beta phase. You already have all your features and you're debugging now. So I was thinking one day you're going to release a beta viewer for this, and then it's going to become official. So I think it would be nice the day that it's going to be open for public. I don't know, there is like a landing zone for the new avatars or something like this. If Linden Lab maybe made like an Animesh island or something like this, like for the new people arriving into Second Life, the new generations for the future, to immediately see what you brought into for a Second Life, because uh, this thing you're doing is so amazing, but there's seeing how the level of content creation creators are in Second Life. It can take a long time before we're gonna see a lot of Animesh around. So it would be nice that at least the public would be aware of it right away. At least for the newcomers.
That's one of our goals, was having test items in the library. For something that's this big, we're going to do a big announcement, and I think, making people aware that they have these items in their inventory will be a great way that people can immediately start playing with it. As the company develops new things, new features, these always get incorporated in things like what the moles, the LDPW, the Linden Department of Public Works, does for their experiences. So yeah, we'll want to make sure that people know about it.
Yeah, I think there's different stages for making this publicly visible. When we first go to a project viewer, we'll have test regions on a DD, like we do now. It may be the same regions or maybe some additional ones, but open to everybody to use. And so that'll be mostly useful for content creators. If anybody else wants to pop in and see what's going on, they can, but the main purpose there is to let people do testing, and with the understanding that things may be glitchy or whatever. But then once we get to the stage where things are more stable and we're getting we're getting closer to release, or we actually are out in public release, then this stuff is going to work everywhere. It'll work all over the main grid, and at that point we could also set up some regions or add some content to existing regions to show this stuff off to people, and hopefully introduce the new people to it as well. Yeah, I think it'd be cool if we could have like for starter avatars that include Animesh pets or something like that. But not my department, just something that I'm throwing out as something that'd be cool.
If I think about limits, I mean, I can only imagine like making a whole sim like a zoo and having, I don't know, buildings and stuff with moving parts, and try to see how much Animesh can you stick in a simulator and see what happens. all different animations, not like, here you have uh, 3 zombies dancing, but they're dancing with the same animation also. This needs to be considered.
Well, I don't know what this announcement recently that Linden Lab had about this grid-wide experience, but it would be interesting if this grid-wide experience could include a little NPC code to throw into our Animesh.
Yeah, I kind of doubt that the timing would work out for these particular 2 projects, but it's certainly possible that some future thing would incorporate Animesh as well.
I'm thinking like grid-wide zombie attacks or something.
Probably not in time for this Halloween, but yeah, well, that would be a cool thing to have. Yeah, Bunny, I'll pass that along. Alexa, did you catch that? There was a suggestion to make some of the existing mesh content, mesh avatars, more copyable and editable as well for people who want to play around with those. It's it's another thing we might want to consider, but currently they are working on some new stuff that's Animesh specific.
I'd like to hear a little more on the progress of the texture baking system.
Yeah, I talked about that a little bit earlier. The update that we're doing for the well, there's a couple of different things. There's the update to just increase the maximum resolution of baked textures, right? That's a prerequisite for bakes on mesh. The other context where we talked about that was the possible future NPC oriented project where we might support texture baking for things like Animesh objects. Which one were you wondering about?
I'm just more or less wondering how far along it is. I mean, we hear about these projects and we have these ideas in our heads, and we're just wondering when, we might be able to see something about it.
You want everything now.
Exactly.
People do usually want everything now. Yeah. Yeah. So basically we have an updated baked bake service that allows you to have higher resolution baked textures, and that's deployed for testing on some of the internal development grids. Before we could actually release that, we need to look at the impact on existing viewers. Is this stuff going to get displayed correctly, or is it going to get dropped on the floor? Do we need to handle some kind of backwards compatibility there? And we also need to understand the performance impact, right? Basically allowing the baking process to make higher resolution textures means that the baking process becomes more expensive. Does this mean we need to bring up more servers? Anybody who's been coming to these meetings for a while has probably had the experience of asking for something and having me go, oh, that would require changing the baking service. That's really scary. Well, now we're changing the baking service, and it is really scary. Getting to the point where we can actually test this and make sure that it all works and nothing falls over, is going to take some time. But once we've got that, then the next step there would be to work on actually adding support for adding bakes on mesh. I think that having the bakes on mesh is actually easier than um, what we're doing now with changing the baking service, just because it doesn't require us to change a lot of services behind the scenes. It's more just adding a couple of flags to some objects and handling it correctly in the viewer. But that's just my impression before we've tried to do it. It can always turn out to be hairier once we get started on it.
Hey, I didn't ask for higher resolution.
Yeah, people did though. It's I think it's probably true that if the goal of Bakes on Mesh is to allow people to get quality comparable to what they're used to now with on mesh on mesh-based avatars, then 512 is probably too low for a lot of those applications. So that's why we're actually allowing it to go up to 1024. But yeah, it does obviously require some additional work. I think if we came out with something where you could do bakes on mesh, but you were limited to 512, then it wouldn't really be a solution to the problem for most people who are trying to to have a different mechanism for customizing their meshes, and probably wouldn't be very widely adopted.
I think as a creator too, it's as an avatar creator, it's interesting how this is going to work, how all these layering and now we're going these these products that we make are going to be tradable with like the textures will actually be an object in your folder. So, and then, all the work that's been done with outfits and the outfit folder and the images on our outfits, I think it all like really ties in nicely, and it's pretty exciting to be a creator and doing avatars.
Yeah, I think it'll be cool when people can customize their mesh avatars without having to have full perm meshes. Basically, if you can take advantage of the baking process, then that gives you a hook for adding things like tattoos or other kind of layers to your stuff. And it'll be interesting to see where people go with that.
We need tradable outfits.
Yeah, I think that's it's an unfortunate limitation of outfits in their current form. You can make an outfit, but you can't kind of sell an outfit directly. You've basically got to make a folder full of items instead. Let's see. Going back, we've had a little bit of discussion through the meeting about cube maps and reflections. I do see the comments. I don't have any immediate comment on that. It would certainly be nice to push things in the direction of having fancier graphics, and that's something we might want to think about. But at this point, I think we're pretty much fully booked with the stuff we're working on.
I have a question for both you and Alexa. Like, you personally, as Linden Lab developers, what do you see? Like, what would be the most amazing thing you can imagine in world one day with Animesh? Your personal point of view.
Yeah, my experience is that we can't really imagine in advance everything that people are going to do with the capabilities that we add to Second Life. So, really, I think the most amazing thing is going to be, what somebody comes up with that nobody's even thought about yet, and we'll see. The kinds of things that I like, or especially, are things like pets, and I think adding the ability to make the world feel more alive. We can have scenery features that move, or vehicles that do complex things. I think one of the limitations that you have now is that if a region doesn't have a lot of avatars in it, it can feel very kind of stiff and uh, uh, not very lively. And I think it's going to be a lot easier to avoid that if we have the ability to animate the objects themselves. So
For me, I
we'll
just
see.
always love. Sorry. I'm always interested to see what games people create. I'm a big gamer, so I love to see the creativity that our users take something and push it in new levels and new applications that we never thought of. And that's the most exciting thing.
I think for what you both mentioned, like I think it's very important to introduce the speed of the animation, like if you can manipulate the speed of the animation in world. And also another thing that I think would be nice to have is like, in Second Life you can either walk, jump, or crouch, yeah, but you cannot like slow walk, tiptoe, or go prone, or things like this. So little things like this would be nice to have. Like I can make an NPC that I don't know could go prone and how you say when you struggle on the ground, yeah, or tiptoe, but a client can't do that. So I think like since you're developing Animesh, maybe you could look into adding a little more features, like from the speed point of view of the animation, and also for the client side, for the client avatar, personal avatar, because it's gonna end up that I know what's gonna happen. There's gonna be some amazing guys gonna do amazing characters or animals doing stuff, and then people are gonna say, "Oh, I wish I could do that same thing with my own avatar," and I can't. I need to buy an animation for that, but it's not like
Yeah, well, there are certainly things we could do in the direction of allowing more complex. I guess I would call most of that stuff part of the locomotion graph. Allowing the ability to be crawling along the ground or tiptoeing or whatever. It's not really part of this project, but it's the kind of thing that there certainly would be some value to doing it. Let's see. A little ways back, I saw there was a mention about a juror that had been accepted. I should probably put in the kind of standard disclaimer about that. Generally, if we import a JIRA, it means that we're interested in it in a context where we'd like to be able to think about it and keep an eye on it. Often if there's something that looks like, oh well, this is something that might fit in an upcoming project or something, we might import it. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're committing to implement it in that form in the near future. So I understand people get excited when they see that something's been accepted, and I don't want anybody to be disappointed, but understand that there's a lot of steps involved in going from a proposal to something that actually gets implemented and released, and kind of getting the JIRA brought in is really only the first step. I don't know, I guess a little bit like a bill becoming a law or something.
Yeah, and who you giving this millions to?
Oh, Vera, I forgot to ask. Are you gonna animate Second Life Ocean? Like, is it gonna be possible to animate it finally? I don't know, have some waves or something like that?
Animate the ocean. Don't have anything currently in the works to change the behavior of the water. All right. Well, we're at time. We should probably wrap up for this week. I think we don't have a meeting next week because of our usual company meeting that conflicts with this time slot. So probably I think I'll see everybody in 2 weeks. I'll update the wiki page. I think it probably hasn't been updated for the next few weeks.
Thank you all.
Thanks for your
another
rider,
question. Ooh.
Alexa.
What do I say?
Sunny skies always. Okay, well thanks everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for
Have a great afternoon.
See you guys.
Hold on.
Yeah, I was wondering, will we ever get weather in the future? Rainy days across Second Life forever. That'd be great.
There are weather systems.
Well,
the
sensor,
project is
but-
going to let you. The EAP project is going to let you make quite a few adjustments to the environment on a region parcel. We aren't. If you're asking for particulates falling from the sky, that is out of scope.
Just do
I
that
guess
yourself.
still stick with that prim scope, the rain that we have.
Actually, I've seen some pretty good stuff done with particle rain, where they actually had different emitters based on where you were standing, so that the covered area didn't. It showed it. They raised it up by the right amount, so that the raindrops looked like they were coming on, were bouncing on the covered section on the bus stop.
That'd be cool. Only problem I have with particle weather is that it goes through buildings no matter how hard you try. Like, you can position it and then it's like, yay, and then you look in the corner and then there's one speck of rain coming through or you're snowing inside. No matter how hard you try.
Think of that as a hole in the roof.